Welcome back to Reclaim You. Hi, Casey.
Hi.
How's it going?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to make this announcement.
Woo!
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So, backstory, everybody. A couple of weeks ago, it really was just a couple of weeks ago, right?
It
Okay.
was.
Casey and her husband had a beautiful idea. The practice over the past few years, we've opened up a handful of pro bono spots for folks who are experiencing financial hardship. And of course, sliding scale spots we've always had. And we know that the need is there for folks to have some form of financial assistance. And we're doing the very best we can to meet our community's needs in maintaining access to treatment for trauma and eating disorders. So Casey and her husband had a beautiful idea of starting to create merchandise that could help fund this scholarship program. So we've been hard at work, and yeah, we're gonna launch the merch.
Woo!
Yay!
Yes.
So we're excited. We're excited.
We are very.
So we're gonna have sweatshirts, t-shirts, mugs. There's a hat on there. We were just talking about designing a bag. So yeah, people are invited to check out the merch and support the Reclaim community.
Yes. It's so exciting. Oh, I'm so
Yay.
excited.
Me too.
Yes.
Me too. I'll put the link in the show notes.
When you buy something, it is helping, someone who really needs the services and doing something for a good cause. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you in advance. Thank you in advance. And of course, we're going to continue to do the work that we do with folks who need it and do our best to support them as best as we can. This will just maybe increase our capacity to meet more people's needs when they're having a tough time. All right, let's dive into today's episode. We're talking authenticity.
My favorite word.
Tell us more.
Yes. So this is a word that I feel like is all over my get to know me page on the website. It's probably the thing that I talk about in consults a lot, and probably the thing that I talk about the most in sessions. And it's quite a buzzword, which I find kind of a blessing and a curse. It's kind of a bummer because it's kind of like grief. When we talked about grief, like there are so many perceptions about what grief is, and there are so many perceptions about what authenticity is, right? And I think how I would describe it to people is living your life in a way that's aligned with who you are, which is, again, a simple definition to a very complex journey.
Yeah, right? I'm like, oh crap, who am I?
For the rest of your life, right? Like,
right? Yeah.
You'll be forever. So let me preface with it is a forever journey, right? Because we are forever changing beings. But I think that in the work that we do, in working with trauma, working with eating disorders, there is so much that can really change the course of your authenticity over your lifetime. That I think most people, I'm going to be very confident when I say most people do not live an authentic life. For many different reasons, right? There is what we come across a lot is diet culture and trauma, right? And then there's capitalism, there's culture, there's so many things that tell us who we are. Well, if you have somebody telling you who you are your whole life, then when do you have the opportunity to figure out who the hell you are?
Yeah.
Never. Which sucks. Totally sucks. But I tell people when working with them that if you don't know who you are, that's okay. Right? Like, I think it overwhelms people, right? Like, who am I? Like, what's my identity? What do I like? What do I, and I think for people who are in a healing journey, it's probably not the first thing you're going to start thinking about. You're going to think about why you're not living an authentic life. Right? And having compassion towards that.
Mm-hmm.
So, diet culture. I'm sure you've heard in all of the podcasts so far is diet culture tells you how you should be, what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat, you know, how good you should be, working out and all these things that don't ever ask you what you want, ever. So going towards intuitive eating and intuitive movement and all of those things are so foreign because there is no trust in who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So really good, I'm just thinking of it. I was like, oh my gosh, duh. What I do with clients when I first work with them in kind of like this weird question of like, what do I want? And
Mm-hmm.
what are my goals and all of that stuff. I ask them to tell me about a memory that makes them feel joy or contentment or passion, something that made them happy. And I'm putting quotes
Mm-hmm.
around that for people who are listening because it may not be happy, maybe another form, contentment or something. And they tell the story and they get all into it, right? And you can tell like the change in the tone of their voice and like their facial expressions and how fast they're talking. And I say, how does that feel? How does it feel to tell me that story?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I forgot I was even in therapy. Or like I wasn't in this space right
Mm-hmm.
now. Or I just had a flow, or I felt all the tension leave my body. And I say, this is you. This is
Mm-hmm.
who you are. Which I guess we can also say that this kind of is reminiscent of the self in parts work, right? So this
Mm-hmm.
part that can understand all of the nuances of us and come to a certain agreement.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's a good exercise for anybody to do. Like you
Yeah.
don't need a therapist to guide you through that. You can just do that or really be mindful of how you feel when you're doing things.
Mm-hmm.
If you're feeling resentment, maybe that's an invitation to think about, is this what you really want to be doing?
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, there's so much we could talk about.
Could you share a little bit about your interest in authenticity? Like, yeah, it's like at the
Yeah.
root of a lot of our work. And like I was talking about with Laura, I think a couple of weeks ago, the work that we do is personal because it's human, right? And we all have these experiences, which in most part draw us to a certain type of work, right? So if there's any like tidbits from your personal experiences of reclaiming your authenticity, and I'm also thinking about the name of the podcast, Reclaim You, right? Like,
Mm.
this is what we're doing, and this is what we're hoping to help people do is reclaim what's true to them. Anyway, that was long-winded.
No, I love it. I love it. I mean, there's so many parts. I think in, the first episode where we talked about the history of diet culture, I kind of told some of
Mm-hmm.
my story in terms of, always being so hyper vigilant about what people saw me as, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being in a bigger body, feeling as though I had to compensate by being smart or being quiet. Now I'm 30 and I am neither of those things all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I am not the
Mm-hmm.
smartest, and that's okay. And I am obnoxiously loud. Um, and that took time. Like, that took
Mm-hmm.
time to own. I mean, I think growing up, I would say that my experience with my own trauma journey obviously created a lot of shame. It created a lot of like, this is what feels safe to do and to be, and to not try new things. And my world was very small. And I think a lot of people who experience trauma, their world becomes very small. And really jumping outside of what you know to explore that is feels unsafe. So that's another way we are compassionate towards that in the work that we do. And from personal experience, I know that that's really hard.
Yeah.
But I also think that, every season of my life, I learned something new, like when I graduated high school, when I graduated college, and when my father passed away, and when I met my husband, and when we got married. Like, every time was kind of an invitation to reevaluate who I was.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the biggest part of learning what authenticity was to me was feeling safe to do it.
Mm, yeah.
So I think that that is a luxury and a privilege to have.
Yeah.
that not everybody has a person or a community that they feel safe to explore that. So my husband, shout out to Chris,
Hi, Chris.
was probably the biggest part of me learning who I was. A person in my life who allowed me to try new things and was always supportive. And if something didn't work out, it didn't work out. And always allowing me to ground back to just the bare basics of who I was. And that was
Mm-hmm.
really important. You know, I've told in the beginning, in the first podcast, like my total, revamp of my external appearance, which is not the most important thing about me, but something that I have felt that I have tried to do what other people expected from me as a
Mm-hmm.
woman, as, a professional, as a
Mm-hmm.
wife, as, as a 30-year-old. And honestly, I say fuck it to all of that. I don't care
Yep.
anymore. You do not have to dress a certain way because you're a certain age or the role you play or whatever. You do not have to wear makeup if you don't want to. You don't have to get your hair done if you don't want to. But if you do, like, that's fine too. Just
Mm-hmm.
being able to have choice in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think diet culture takes away choice, trauma takes away choice. And most people have been touched by either, if not both of those things. So if you don't
Yeah.
feel safe all the time, delving into what feels aligned with you, that's totally okay. I've had
Mm-hmm.
moments in my life where it was definitely safer to succumb to diet culture. It was definitely
Mm-hmm.
safer to succumb to what my parents expected of me or what my teachers expected of me or what have you. But when I had the chance, I took it. And I think that's what I encourage to everyone is when you have the chance, you take a little step forward. But if you don't have
Mm-hmm.
the opportunity right in front of you, that's totally okay.
Yeah.
And being compassionate towards yourself when you're just trying to get by.
Yeah.
Authenticity is a luxury in today's society sometimes. And that's
Oh,
really
yeah.
sad to say. Really sad.
Yeah, and I'm just envisioning like taking little like tiptoe steps in, right? And like seeing how it feels. Ooh, this might feel a little scary. Gonna like run out, and go back to what feels safe. But it's like the more that we can do that, we can tiptoe in and feel, oh, maybe I can tolerate this. Like maybe I won't be rejected. Maybe someone will see me. Maybe someone will affirm me, right? And then popping back out, but maybe you'll stay longer the next time. Something that we were just talking about before we started recording, and this resonates so much more now, is this thought of I belong here. You belong here with yourself.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Oh, I love it
We're
so
putting it
much.
on a bag. We're putting it on a bag.
Yes. Merch. No, I think that's so important because like I think when the simple definition of authenticity, right, can lead people to be very overwhelmed. But the basics go back to like what feels good to you. Going, out to party or go to a club like does not feel good to me anymore. Like those
Mm-hmm.
days are over. I want to like be in the
Yep.
dirt and garden and pull potatoes from my garden. Like that's what makes me happy.
Uh-huh.
Being with certain people in your life. Like if they don't make you feel good and you have the safety to set boundaries or remove people from your life, that is a
Mm-hmm.
part of authenticity, right?
Mm-hmm.
You hear therapists all the time that are like, boundaries are important. And you're like, ugh, this is another
Uh,
reason why. This is another
yeah.
reason why. Because if you feel yourself being continually resentful, angry, frustrated, even anxious and depressed, there are many reasons why those things could be happening, but just to assess, like, what is feeling good in my life and what do I have
Mm-hmm.
control over, right? If you have control over something and you have choice, I say just pause and see what's there, right? We're not judging it, we're
Mm-hmm.
not shaming ourselves. It's just what's here. The more you do that, the more you can develop a trust in yourself, right? We talk about body
Mm-hmm.
trust all the time in here. That's hard
Mm-hmm.
enough. The mental
Yeah.
trust is another piece of it. All of the things that we do, all of the work that we do with eating disorders and trauma is coming back to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
reclaiming you, right? Like
Reclaiming
It's
you.
important for a reason. I say that to clients all the time. Like, you know why our practice is called what it's called? And they're like, oh,
Uh-uh.
right.
Like,
Right.
now I get it.
I get it. But it's coming back to you. And the more we learn to rely on ourselves in a healthy way, not in a hyper independent
Mhm.
way, but in a way
Mhm.
of I can rely on myself to tell me what I need. I can have intuition and I can trust that. Maybe some of that resentment will go away. Maybe some of that existential crisis you may be feeling will start to fade away.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Uh-huh.
because hey, that's a buzzword too. But if you're starting to feel like that, anybody, that's an evaluation to
Mhm.
pause. Just to pause
Yeah.
and check out what's happening. Invitation for anybody who's feeling like they want to buy a Maserati and move to Bali. Just saying. I thought that once or
For
twice.
like, sure, sure. I mean, Bali sounds lovely, right? Like,
It does sound lovely.
also,
Just leave everything. Bye.
well, just like take the things that feel and like the people that feel the best, take them with you,
Yeah,
right? Like,
take them in the Maserati if they fit. You know,
yeah, yeah, cool. Pile them in.
your
Yeah.
therapists feel this way too, guys. Just throwing it out there. We all feel this way every once in a while.
Totally. But I love that,
Oh,
that like if you're feeling like it's like this existential like worry or angst or, you know, it's an indication or an invitation to say like, what's off? What's not in alignment? Like what's not mine anymore? You know, I think a lot of people, especially in recovery from disordered eating and from diet culture, start to feel that way of like, I don't think this fits for me anymore. And it's this slow process of starting to like send it back where it belongs. Like you didn't call on this to come in. A lot of times it was planted. You can start to send it back, like externalize the shit out of that. And the same thing can be about expectations and people pleasing and thinking about all of these different things that really pull us out of our authenticity.
yes. Oh, I love that. I love that because I mean, the thing that I see a lot in, the recovery space and the body image space is an evolution of friendship. So
Mm,
much like that's been coming up so much in the work that we do, and it's hard because there's this kind of hanging around part inside of us that says like friendship scarcity. It says,
mm,
like this scarcity mindset is not just food, it's not just,
mhm,
it's body, it's friends, it's,
mhm.
your whole world gets dismantled in a beautiful way when you're in
Mhm.
recovery. Just like
Yeah.
we said in the trauma and grief episode, it's like when you unravel something, it doesn't get necessarily better. It gets to, oh, there's that thing too. Oh, okay. But the most freeing conversations I've had with clients are when they finally realize, oh my God, like that person is so not for me. Like
Mhm.
what are they doing here? Um
Uh-huh.
and just the right? Like I don't feel compelled or trapped to keep these people in my life that don't make me feel supported, don't make me feel respected or held or what have you, which is really hard. Like that, I call it the female culture, the girl
Mhm.
culture,
Mhm.
where it's kind of embedded with social media too. Is like surface level friendships are like status quo these days. Like
Mhm.
that's what we know. And then when you
Yeah.
start to do all this work and you become very almost like vulnerable, I guess, and you go, who can I talk to about this? And when you can't see a friend in your life where you feel safe talking about this stuff, that's an eye opener.
Mhm. Yeah.
Totally. And that's a lot of work. I mean, it could be family,
Mhm.
but it can also be friends, like
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily, not in just one or the other. But that's really hard. Like all of
Mhm.
this dismantling. But I find that to be a very rewarding kind of step on the hill, so to speak,
Mhm.
that has been really rewarding for people. So,
Yeah, it's so hard to, as adults, to make friends, right? Especially if you're craving not this surface level, like whatever, like that's fine to
Mm,
an extent, but when you're craving the depth of friendship and connection and authenticity, right? It's
yes.
it's hard to find. And so sometimes letting go of the other kind of surface level friendships that aren't serving you or just engaging in them when it feels necessary or whatever, that can be
Hmm.
a really hard process back to grief. Of course, it's like grieving what you know, grieving some semblance of connection, and trusting in yourself that you're going to find the right people who are going to be able to meet you, like the real you, and honor that and not
Mm,
judge, the depth that you're hoping to experience in relationship.
yes. Which, when you were saying that, and I'm like consumed in listening, I see risk, risk, risk,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody's listening and hears like risk inside their head, like you're not wrong,
Right.
right? Like the authenticity journey, just like recovery, just like trauma healing, it's all a risk,
Yeah.
right? Because your brain says what we know and what's familiar is safe. And
Yeah.
yes, that's true, but is there more out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could life be
Mm-hmm.
bigger? Does
Mm-hmm.
life need to be bigger? Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Like if your life and extenuating circumstances are stressful and you're just trying to survive, maybe like authenticity journey is not the next thing on your list. It could be,
Right. Right.
which is why I really tell people like it is a privilege to be able to spend that time
Mm-hmm.
with
Mm-hmm.
yourself. So maybe it's not a, you know, thing that you commit wholeheartedly to, but maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
something that you spend, part of your evening or morning routine just kind of assessing like how are we doing? How's our personal
Mm-hmm.
life? How's family? How's, my hobbies? How's work? Am I feeling any joy in my life? Am I feeling connected?
Mm-hmm.
And just having a little check in with yourself. It doesn't have to be much,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe it's, I'm gonna get a latte instead of an iced coffee today because that's what I'm
Mm-hmm.
feeling, right?
'Cause that
Like it
sounds
sounds
good.
small,
Yeah.
right? That's maybe what I'm getting after this. It might be a sign. That just changing it up, like maybe
Mhm.
trying something you've never tried before, or, like you've put that hobby down for a while because somebody laughed at you or said it was dumb or whatever. Like maybe it's time to pick it up again.
Mhm. Mhm.
Maybe it's time to go to that book club that you've been looking at on Meetup and never went to. That's me.
Mhm.
That's me.
I'm like, I want to go to a book club.
That's me. Yes, I'm going to take my own advice, everyone. Keep me accountable. I'm going to go to that book club.
You got this.
I got this. But just a little thing. It can be a cup of coffee, but it can also be,
Mhm.
changing your job. It can be changing a
Yeah.
friendship. But it's all about pausing, compassion, choice, and action. You don't have to
Hmm.
follow them all in one shot, but they're
Hmm.
all included.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's like this slow build, right? It's like chipping away at it, chipping
yes,
away at like, okay, what's next? What little piece of myself is wanting to be heard and seen, whether that's, a corner of pleasure or like
mm-hmm.
laughter when you haven't actually laughed in like a week. Sometimes I'm like, oh shit, I
Yes.
actually haven't like laughed. I'm like a solid,
Oh,
like what is up with that? So like let me
yes,
prioritize finding actual joy and welcoming that
yes,
back into my being because so it's just like turning towards what's ready to be seen, like what do I have capacity for, how can I access this even in the smallest way, like a little glimmer of it can be enough.
yes. I love that. Have you laughed
Mm-hmm.
since? Just checking in.
Oh, probably.
Oh, good.
Probably. Who
God, I
knows,
love
right?
a
And
good
that's the thing, I'm
laugh.
like, I don't know, have I who knows, I'll pay attention.
I gotta send you some
Yeah.
jokes. I'll text you some jokes.
Yeah, send me some solid jokes, some good like memes and stuff. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, so we're still trying to figure it out, and
Yeah,
that's okay. That's all right.
totally. And honestly, coming back to so much can get in the way, right? A lot of people who've experienced trauma and complex trauma, right? They can't trust, right, for really good reason, like themselves, other people. This response of pleasing and striving to be all of the things to all of the people so that they're constantly disconnected
Mm,
from themselves. Like there's lots of good reasons why authenticity is really hard, on top of just the culture that we live in, when everyone shows their highlight reels or talks about their reels, or that's all we see, or that's kind of all we want to see. We don't see the hard stuff, we don't see the yucky stuff, and how difficult it
mm,
is to change course and just be with yourself through it.
yes. Yes. Which is why I say it is truly, a secondary or tertiary part of the journey, especially if you're one experiencing, PTSD. It is
Mm-hmm.
really not a luxury that you have at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes your first experiences in practicing that are in a therapy room or in a group
Yeah.
therapy session.
Mm-hmm.
And acknowledging that is important when they do happen.
Mm-hmm.
When I see a smile in a session, or I hear someone laugh, or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they talk about something of their own volition, that
Yeah.
is where authenticity is showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And getting people to understand what that looks like in a safe body and in a safe environment is the first step.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're
Yeah.
starting your journey, don't worry about it yet. Don't worry about
Yeah.
it. This is a,
Yeah.
a future thing, but maybe trying it just in the simplest of terms.
Yeah.
And it's kind of where body image and eating disorders and authenticity come into play. Maybe you switch
Mm-hmm.
up your cereal today. I don't know. Just throwing it out there. Try something different in your coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you'll love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And trust yourself. If you hate it, like, cool, don't do it again. But if you love
Yeah,
it,
don't
like,
do it again. You'll learn something new about yourself.
yeah. When you were saying that, I was just thinking, this one time my therapist said something like, ah, shit, you're really not having a great time. And I was like,
Mm.
fuck, you're right. Right? Like, I hadn't even
Yes.
realized it. And there is this like performative thing that can happen of, yeah, I've got it all. I'm cool. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Right. Stop and a smile
Mm-hmm.
and go. Of course, over the years, I've like done better with that. But, but just being seen in that moment and being like, oh, fuck. Yeah, I'm seeing it too. Like, I'm not okay. That's not great.
Yeah.
You know, that's huge, huge for someone to actually see
Mm.
you. So sometimes it is just in the therapy room that allows you to see yourself a little bit more deeply.
Yes. And that space to feel validated in that and not feel judged,
Mm-hmm.
that you're
Mm-hmm.
allowed to show up in the raw and uncomfortable and the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
We don't live in a world where that is universally accepted. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry that it's not. I'm sorry for
Mm-hmm.
me, for Sarah, and for everybody listening. That sucks,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But this can be a first step to see what you need in your community, in your supports, to feel good about just showing up as you are.
Yeah.
Right? Just
Mm-hmm.
because therapists say we want to meet you where you are doesn't mean that
Mm-hmm.
everyone else in your life shouldn't be doing the same.
Yeah.
And if we were, then probably we live in a more authentic world. But
Oh, totally.
that's
Totally.
a podcast for another day.
That's like a
That's
webinar, I think. I don't know.
woo. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. The one thing that's also just coming to my mind is values work, and how
Mhm.
values work can be supportive of folks kind of reclaiming bits and pieces of authenticity. Sometimes I know we'll be like, oh, values week. And people are like, what the fuck are values? Like, I'm like, what are you talking about?
Uh,
So can you speak to that a little bit about values
yeah.
and their importance, and kind of like how to use them as a guide back to yourself?
Mm. Yes, yes. So I've done this, a few times over the years, as a kind of guide. It's not always necessary, but it's really good as like a stepping stone. So you can find them online anywhere. But we
Mm-hmm.
can maybe include a values, list
Yeah,
in the podcast link. But
definitely.
it varies. Like if you think about values, they're They're things that are important in life, not to everybody, but to each their own, right? So family, friends, loyalty, respect, passion, fun, laughter, love are the things that are really the roots of humanity and some culture and some community, like the bare bones basics. So
Mm-hmm.
if someone is coming in and they're having all of these stressors and issues with boundaries and, maybe struggling with disordered eating, handing them that is hard for them to say, like, what's
Mm-hmm.
important to you? And they go, I don't
Mm-hmm.
fucking know. Like, I don't know. So I encourage people to just say, like, what words do you resonate with at all? Either good, bad, or indifferent. And it's just an invitation to take one by one. What do you feel in your body when you think about this word? Does it feel icky? Does it feel good? And when you start to understand what's important to you, you take all those values and you say, am I living my life in accordance to them? If respect is important to you and you're having relationships where you are not feeling respected and you're feeling shitty, makes sense. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where it gets tricky is that could be a family member, and family might also be another value to you. So, maybe that's pausing and going to parts work and seeing what
Mm-hmm.
parts of you are trying to protect you. And that's something you can do with a therapist, and trying to understand which parts need a say in this and maybe coming to some
Mm-hmm.
form of negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier said than done, obviously,
Of
but I
course.
think it definitely has value, but has value in in body image, eating disorder, and trauma work. And you can even hone in on, like, what values do you see your eating disorder going against, right? As a way to kind of see, are those things important to me? Maybe that's a way to encourage some motivation for change. Or, these are the values I grew up with, but now that I am a grown up, they're not really the values that I'm aligned with anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
you get to create your own.
Yeah.
So values are kind of the stepping stone for the foundation to the stepping stones of authenticity. And it's definitely a good starting point, especially to really start to just connect.
Mm-hmm.
Connect doesn't mean action, just means connecting.
Love
Does that
it.
answer the question?
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
Totally. We'll make a little like a PDF for folks to grab and check out if values work is something that you want to, dabble in or look at or consider, put it down, pick it back up, whatever works. We'll include
Yeah.
that in the show notes. Totally. What did
Yay.
we miss?
I don't know. I feel like we always talk about a lot.
I know. I know. The winding road. Totally.
No, I mean, I think at the end of the day, authenticity is an ever evolving journey. Just like
Mm-hmm.
trauma healing, just like eating disorder recovery, as Sarah says, chipping away. And all of these things, authenticity is just another thing we're talking about, that it's curiosity instead of judgment. It's one step at a time. It's recognizing that this is a luxury to do, and that we recognize that. But also, if you have the space to do it, to take advantage. And yeah, it's important. But be gentle with
Mm-hmm.
yourself if you can't show up in your authentic self. You're in there.
Mm-hmm.
You're always in there.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Always in
reclaiming that
there.
every single day. Mm-hmm.
You're reclaiming you every single day.
Yeah. Love it.
Ah,
All
all right. This is hard
right.
work, y'all.
It is. It is. But worth it.
Well, thank you, Casey.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll add the link to the merch store. There's lots of like reclaiming, right? Because that's this process, reclaiming authenticity, yourself, your values, what gives you pleasure and joy, your boundaries, right? We could go on and on and on and on. So be sure to check it out if you'd like to support. Got anything else you want to add,
Yeah.
Casey?
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for your wisdom. And we will be back next week, everybody. We will talk to you then.
See you guys.
Bye.